The song say, Lord, you've been so good, and certainly, certainly, you have been good to me. For 50 years, you allowed me to use my gift for your glory. 50 years, Lord. And on September the 22nd, we will be celebrating 50 years in music ministry. And my brothers and sisters, trust me, on that night, we will not be celebrating the man, Harold Sutton, the man, and the accomplishment, but we will be celebrating the gift of music that Yahweh has gracefully bestowed upon me to allow me to perform such at a universal level, because we know music is universal. Some people speak 2 and 3 languages, some 5 and 6. But Yahweh allowed me to speak a universal language that everybody can understand, that it can reach the soul of every man. And we are so humble and we are so grateful that he chose me, because he could have given it to someone else. And he did. I'm not the only one that possessed this gift, but the one that I have, can't nobody do this one like me, because he gave it to me. And on that night, we will be celebrating the gift and giving Yahweh the thanks for that gift. For the gift has been amazing to me and allowed me to go to venues that I could only dream about, and arenas. It put me in front of royalty, people that a person like me is not supposed to be even in the midst, but God, Yahweh, has blessed me that through this universal language I was able to perform before many. And the gift had never let me down. I might have let you down, but the gift has never let me down. The gift has always blessed God's people. And we are so grateful. We are so grateful for this gift. Later on, I'm going to share with you how this came about. The reason I call it this gift, some people say, well, you anointed. Well, of course, the anointed one is the Hamashiach, the Messiah. He is the anointed one. He's the one that gives. He's the one that breaks the yoke, and he anointed me to do the work, but I can't do anything unless he shows up. But this gift that he's given me, there's a history behind it. Many people say, they have gifts and they're gifted. There's a difference between someone who just who learn of a particular craft. You study and you learn, because you practice and practice. That's why you get real good at it. But I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to show you why, and I'm going to tell you why it's a true gift from God, because it's nothing of my doing. Okay? But anyway, don't forget to join us on September the 22nd at 6 o'clock p.m. at the E Church located 1907 Columbia Avenue there in Landover, Maryland, and we're going to have such a wonderful time. Let me share some of the lineup with you, and I have to look here on my phone because I don't want to leave anybody out. But helping me to celebrate this monumental occasion, we have Trinita Latimore, Pastor John Tillery, I know John, Theron Fowler, the son of the great Ricky Fowler, who I was proud to be his music director for over 30 years. I remember him, Mr. Spread the News guy. Yes, his son will be representing his dad on that night, singing his dad big hit Spread the News. And then Clarissa Dodden Seller, she's going to be with us singing My Rightful Place, her and Antonio Watts. Brother Lord Moore. For some of y'all don't know, when I first started, I started in quartet. I played guitar with quartet. So representing the quartet division is going to be my brother brother, the world famous brother Lord Moore. And from Baltimore, Maryland, Sister Veronica Martinez, those fabulous Serenity singers. She's going to be in the house. DC's own Tanette Pierre, she's going to be in the house and bringing the word. Of course, we do not have any type of celebration without presenting the word. Will be my dear friend, a fellow musician and songwriter. Y'all know he has that song that everybody is singing all over the world, Even Me, Lord. He's going to be with me on that evening, bringing forth the word. Pastor Michael Reed from the Redeemed Church located in Washington, D.C. So we are so excited. So go get your tickets. Don't procrastinate. Get it today. Eventbrite.com, and just search Harold Sutton. Put my name in the search engine, and it's going to pop right up, and get your ticket on that secure line. I'm telling you, it's going to be an event that you don't want to miss. And to all of those who had a hand in my musical growth, a lot of ministries that entrusted me with their ministry department, I personally thank you. Thank you for choosing the gift to be there for your ministry, and my gift of, it just grew and grew. And so, I can't celebrate without you. Scripture Cathedral, Interdenominational Church, Bethel in Baltimore, Pastor Reed, a Greater Harvest there in Baltimore, Maryland, Dwayne Simmons there in Baltimore, Maryland, and some of the churches that's here, Pastor Jerome Holmes, and you know who you are, Pastor Diane Johnson. Amen. There's a lot. Lord, allow me to share my gift with many of your churches. Now, I know some of you pastors, now one thing you can say, well, the gift never let me down, but that's Sutton. I'm telling you, that Sutton could be a tough guy. But let me just say this to a lot of you guys who may be listening to this, is that one of the things that I understand, I didn't know then, but I do know now. In life, we have 5 stages that we go through. Yes, we have 5 stages that we go through. And sometimes when we go through certain stages, if we're not equipped, if we're not prepared mentally, psychologically, and sometimes, we can make some bad choices and bad decisions. Yes, we do have a psychosocial crisis out here, but if you don't have that balance, amen, and not making no excuse. I came from an unbalanced home. I didn't have a dad in the home, and my mother, she had to work 3 jobs to raise her 8 kids. So therefore we was always on our own. And of course the neighborhood that I grew up in, which was a low income neighborhood called Berry Farms in Washington, D.C. And so somebody said, could anything good come out of Berry Farms? Oh, yes, indeed. I can tell you several good people that came out of Berry Farms. So what happened is that we didn't have male mentors in our life. So that means when we got to a certain age, sometimes we just made bad choices and bad decisions. And, and unfortunately, because, I was going through my maturation process. I wasn't there in a lot of cases with a lot of ministries, especially with the early ministries that I worked with. I'm sure I said some, and I did things, that just really got on your nerves, But thank God, amen, for maturity, and thank God for His Holy Spirit. Amen. I can't give an account for what I've done back in those years, everything. That it's locked in time, right? Embedded in time and locked away. There's nothing I can do about what the past was. Yes, that's who I was. Yes, I may have done that, but that's not who I am today. And I thank God, I thank Yahweh, amen, for showing me the way. So some of you that's out there, if you're still wounded because you remember me from your experience of the past, Throw it away. Throw it away because I'm not that same person. I'm not that same person anyway. All right? So if you can get beyond that, come and help me celebrate because I was a blessing to your ministry, right? So come and help me celebrate. This is going to be a wonderful. I want to celebrate you because you did help me. Your ministries, being there and guiding those choirs, those praise teams, guiding the band, teaching them various things, that was a blessing. And so we want to celebrate you. Okay, will you do that? So meet me September 22nd. Actually, that's only a week away, okay? So meet me there and let's celebrate what Yahweh has done in all of our lives. But most of all, I thank Yahweh for 50 years. Do you realize in those 50 years, I thank him and I praise him because out of those 50 years, as a working musician, I've never missed, I missed only one service. I've never missed services, but I missed one service. And I don't count that as because I woke up sick on that early Sunday morning. I had a hernia, and the hernia erupted. And I had to be rushed to the hospital. But before I went to the hospital, I was actually trying to make it to the service. And I said, well, I go to the hospital after service. But, the pain was so excruciating, it didn't allow me. I thought, well, I'm like, get me to the hospital, get me to the hospital. But that was the only time I've ever missed a service. I've never taken a vacation on a weekend, on the Sundays. If I took a vacation during the week, I was always back for my Sabbath and Sunday services. For 50 years, never missed it. Pastors even went on vacation, and they weren't there, but I was in place. For some reason, I just felt that I was supposed to be at the duty station. That was my assignment, and that's the way I lived for 50 years, never missing a service. I haven't missed those special programs on Easter and New Year's. I was always in place. I had to apologize to my family because I said, you know what, I've always wanted to go to Times Square, but I wasn't able to do it because my heart and my priority was always with ministry. My vacation, my family never experienced a vacation with me on weekends because my priority was always for Sabbath and Sunday churches. Yes, I took my family on vacations and we went during the week, but they never had the experience and the joy to have a Saturday and Sunday, a vacation with me because I was always on duty. That's the way I roll, because I felt that. Not saying that I can't be replaced. Some people say, well, let me call somebody, get them to sit in for me. Well, it's not the same. I'm like, well, I'll take the church through that. And my thing is, you never know who's going to be there, who's going to come, and who might need that anointing. Yeah, because I do realize I'm an anointed musician. And so my thing is, and not saying that if I'm not in a certain place, the glory ain't going to fall. But guess what? I'm there. The glory will fall. Because I'm an anointed vessel. And so that's the way I've always thought. I didn't want anybody else to miss the glory. I felt that if I wasn't in place that maybe people wouldn't receive it. But the flow is a lot different. When your main musician who knows ministry, who knows your ministry, when they're not there, the flow is not the same. Not unless you can find a musician that's just as good and just as anointed, which is hard to find. I'm not saying they don't exist, but it's hard to find. And so with that mentality, I was always at my duty station for 50 years. And I praise God that he allowed me to do it. I never had an injury to my hands where I couldn't do it, or to other part of my bodies where I had to miss service, with the exception of that one I couldn't control with the hernia situation. I am grateful. People have regular jobs that have to take sick leave. They can't go to work. But for 50 years, the Lord allowed me to just flow in his glory, in his gift. And I'm so grateful. Stay tuned. I have some more information for you. I'm going to share with you how this great gift came about. You're going to be surprised. Some people, they go to school and they study, they work for it, and things like that. They really have to work hard at that craft. but I'm going to show you why I call it a great gift. You're going to be shocked. You're going to say, what? Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to share that with you in our next segment. Okay, I'm ready. So you want to know how this gift came about? Well, I'll tell you the story. I try to tell you within the next 7 minutes. Okay, I try to truncate it to condense it because it's something. Well, I was about 10 years old and I was attending my church, and I've always loved music. And my uncle there, Casper Saunders, he would play guitar. And, the kids would watch him play guitars. We all wanted to play the guitars, but we had a whole long line to go through because all of the kids wanted to play. So the older kids was playing. My cousin Arthur and my cousin Matthew played a while, and then there was Michael Williams. And so anyway, so we just sit there and watch on Saturdays. But in the meantime, at home, my older brothers, I have two older brothers, Willie and Timothy. They played instruments. Tim was a guitar player. Tim played guitar, and he was real good. Oh my God! And my brother Willie, he was very good on the drums. Willie used to play with his band called the Illusions. Now Willie is 7 years older than I am, and Tim is like 3.5 years older than I am, and he played in a band as well. And they always got a lot of attention, if you know what I mean. All the girls was always, so here I am. I'm like 10, 11 years old, and I'm like, I want the same attention that my brothers get, So I wanted to play in the band, but my mother wouldn't allow me. Well, I didn't know how to play anything at that time. And so I was coming up on my birthday, and so my aunt was visiting from Dallas, Texas, my Aunt Ethel. So she said, Harold, what you want for your birthday? I said, I want a guitar, Auntie, I want a guitar. So my auntie, she sent the money so I can get a guitar. And I did. I practiced the guitar because I wanted to play in the band. But my mother wouldn't let me play in the band. Now, I was in school here. I was 5th grade, 6th grade. And so I joined the school band. I said, okay, she won't let me join the street band. I joined a school band, but school band didn't have electric guitars. So I wound up playing the trombone. My boy Antonio Watts, my childhood friend. So we would both play the trombone. Now here I am. I weigh like 80 pounds soaking wet. And, and I'm but so tall, at that time, maybe about 5'2", 5'3", and I'm playing the trombone, that big slide trombone. My mother said, boy, why would you pick an instrument that's bigger than your whole body? But see, what she didn't know, no, we didn't allow Christian music in our homes. My mom didn't allow nothing but Christian music. She didn't allow that other stuff. But when Mom was away from work, which she was all the time, my older brother, Willie and Tim, they were listening to James Brown. And one time we was watching television, and I saw James Brown on an Ed Sullivan show. And then while he was performing, he called a name. He said, Fred, give it to me. And Fred came out with this long trombone, and Fred started playing that trombone, and the place went up in a frenzy. And so I said, oh, okay, well, I can play if I learn to play trombone, then I'm going to get a lot of attention. So I got the trombone, and I used to go out in the alley. I lived in Berry Farm, so I would go out in the back alley, and I would blow my trombone, the few notes that I did manage to blow, and I know a couple of songs on the trombone, but I didn't get any attention. The only person that was listening to me was my twin sister and my younger siblings, and they would listen to me, and they said, boy, why don't you stop that noise, So finally, I got disgusted with my trombone, and I saw another one of our childhood friends, David Horn. He lived over on Stevens Road. So David had a trumpet, And so David saw me with my trombone. My trombone was brand new, and the school gave it to me because I played with the school orchestra, and I was, pretty good at it. And so David said, Harold, I trade your, trumpet for the trombone. And I'm like, okay, because I had this trombone now for several months and I'm not getting no attention. So maybe I'll get some attention with the trumpet because, during that time era, that's the birth of, during the 60s, that was the birth of the go-go, Chuck Brown. So we had that go-go, so Chuck had the horns. So I'm like, okay, but maybe the trumpet will work. Well, I got David's old trumpet. And I couldn't even blow a note out of that thing. Okay, so I was like totally disgusted. I'm like, forget it, man. I just went like, forget it. I can't play the guitar at my church because it's a long line of folks. And I just said, forget it. Then all of a sudden, there was one Sunday morning, I heard this loud noise, and a car starting up. And we all know who it was, because we used to laugh every Sunday morning. It was Sister Stanley getting in her car and taking all the Berry Farm kids. She was like loaded up about 20-something kids in this little car, and, the exhaust was terrible. And, it woke up the whole neighborhood. We knew exactly what time it was. And so Miss Stanley, she would go to church. And then one weekend I was outside and they was coming home. And I noticed, getting out the car, all these girls was getting out the car. And I was just looking, and I said, wow, all those pretty young girls, we all the same age, And so, so I got excited. So Miss Stanley said, Lily, that's what they called me when I was growing up. Sister Stanley said, Lily, she said, why don't you come and go to church with me next week? I really didn't have any interest because, when my church on Saturdays, we would go to church from sun up to sundown, and I wasn't trying to step foot in nobody else's church on nobody's Sunday. So, but I saw the girls, and I saw the girls, so I said, okay, I'll go. I said, I'll go, maybe I get some attention, right? Well, then again, so she said, well, look, why don't you come in? The girls were coming in because different ones, they was going in the house, and they was hanging out a little bit, so Miss Sally was fixing them something to eat. So now I've always known Miss Sally and her kids, but I've never went into her house because one of the things that my mother did not allow us to go into people's homes unless she knew them or, it was like that. And so Miss Stanley invited me into her house. I said, well, why don't you come on in for a few minutes? And so I said, okay, because, I knew, I wasn't supposed to, because Mom told me not to, go to anybody's houses. But, it was a whole lot of girls. It was about 13 of them, right? So I went in, and as soon as I hit the door, I noticed there was this old upright piano, big upright piano, black. And I got so excited. I said, Miss Stanley, you have a piano. She said, yes. She said, can you play the piano? I said, yes, I can play the piano. But really, I really couldn't play the piano. All of the kids in Berry Farm, you went to Bernie Elementary School and the music classes, everybody learned how to play boogie woogie on the piano. So I got to Miss Stanley's piano and I started playing the boogie woogie, boom, 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 boom. And I got excited. I was playing it for a long time. She had so much patience. She let me do it. And so after that, she said, well, you can come over anytime and play. And I said, okay. But I would go every day. After school, I would go every day between 3:30, from 3:30 to 5:30. I would be banging on the piano, playing the boogie woogie. Could you imagine? All you hear for 2 hours is the boogie woogie. Boy, the patience Miss Stanley had. But one day, her patience ran out. She said, Lily, let me show you how to play a song. So she pulled out a hymnal, and she said, could you read this? She said, you in the band, could you read this? I said, well, I can only read one line because I played trombone, right? So I couldn't read all those other lines, you had those lines, piano, but especially with the chords, you had, several notes you playing simultaneously. And, and then, of course, you had the bass clef, and I went like, oh, no, I can't read all this at one time, So anyway, so she showed me how to play How Great Thou Art. And I learned it from memory too, note for note, the notes that because she was reading the music. And she taught me how great thou art. So, of course, all I played was how great thou art. But then, after a while, she said, well, look, why don't you play with my sunbeams? And, she would put records on, and the gift that I had was that I was able to hear. I listened to those records, and because as I learned chords, as I learned songs, I could hear those chords. I said, oh, I heard that chord in that song. I heard this chord in this song. So she started doing the Mattie Moss Clark with her choir, Show Me the Way, songs like that. How do you feel when you come out the wilderness? And so, all those songs sound alike. In gospel, in that era, if you learn one song, you know them all, until the Hawkins came along. And then I have to, learn it again. But after a while, I got so good at it, I learned everything that they put on. And so she said, okay, I want you to play for my son being choir. That was Prayer Temple Bible Way. That was the very first church that I played piano for. Prayer Temple Bible Way, a church I passed, the late Pastor Gary Richardson, located there on 13th and I believe that's K Street, Southeast Washington. And so for several years, I played with the Sunbeams, and I'm telling you, those kids tore churches down. We would go through the different Bible Way churches in the district, and we would perform to the point at one time we was at headquarters, and Bishop Smallwood heard his little Sunbeams from their temple, and I was on piano because back at that time, in those days, you really didn't have a youth on those keyboards, the instruments, organs, different things like that. And so he saw me and heard me. He was really impressed. He said, Sister Stanley, I'm inviting you guys to the Journal Convocation in Martinsville. What's that? I'm sorry, not Martinsville, it was Danville, Virginia, down there on Grand Street. It was Bishop Lawrence Campbell's church. And so we went down there, and we just had a ball. The Lord blessed that anointing flowing through once again. So things just grew. Things just grew. And so by the time I got 15 years of age, I was kind of over that, my hormones was acting up, and, I wanted to branch out. I wanted to live my life, and my mother wasn't having it. So at 15, I left home. My mother said, you're not going to do what I tell you to do? Because I didn't want to come, when the lights came on in the evening time, we had to come in the house. And I'm like, come on, Mom, but I didn't want that. I wanted to hang out in the streets. So I left home when I was 15 years old. I went to stay out in Maryland with one of my older brothers, and he allowed me to do whatever I wanted to do. I had absolutely no monitoring. I love my brother though, and but I got out there and I got to remember I was mess with hard drugs, but when you talk about angel dust. That's pretty rough because you talk about hallucination, and I had me the first hit of angel dust. I'll never forget. It was on a Saturday, sitting in the hallway smoking angel dust, man. And in about 15 minutes, man, I was climbing walls. I was on a big time high, man. Moving slow motion and laughing and crying at the same time. One moment you laugh, next moment, and I said to myself, I said, Lord, if you allow me to come down from this, I promise I'm going to go home and I'm going to go back to church because I stopped going to church and everything. And I said, I'm going to go back to church. Just bring me down from this. And so finally, about 10 hours later, I was back to myself, and I kept my word. I said, brother, I'm gone, man. I'm going back home. I'm going back home to my mother's house. And so I was there for a minute at my mom's house, and during this time, I never did tell you, I did wind up playing guitar at my mother's church. When I was about 13, 12 and a half, 13, they did allow me, because my older brothers and my older cousins, they decided, they didn't want to go to church anymore because they was of that age, right? And so some spots came open. So myself and my younger cousin, Luke, we started playing guitar for the church. Well, anyway, when I did come back from out in Maryland, staying with my brother, and And I went to one of the churches that we used to fellowship, the House of God, there on East Capitol Street with the late Bishop Howard Solomon. And his daughter, Pauline, we love Pauline, rest her soul. Pauline, you know, she knew what I had been through. She said, look, she said, I got to preach somewhere tomorrow, and I want you to go with me. And this is what the Lord has done. And I'm still sharing how my gift came about. So I said, okay, well, I'll go. And so I went with her to the church on 15th Street Northeast. It was an interdenominational holiness church, Bishop Ruth Jeffries. It was a lady pastor. And it was the first time I had ever seen or dealt with a lady pastor. But when I first walked into the church, I noticed this organ, this big organ. I've never seen an organ before in my life, not in person. I saw the organ that Billy Preston, Alfred Bowden used to play, that Hammond B3, and on television. And I said, oh, that's a Hammond. That's a Hammond organ. I was so excited because I've never seen a Hammond organ. And so when it was time for Pauline to minister the word and to sing, I went to the piano and played for the service. And the lady that was on the organ, her name was Evangelist Hines, Pastor Hines. And she was on the organ, she was old school. But when she heard me on the piano, after service, she asked me, she said, I enjoyed you. She said, have you ever played the organ before? I said, no. And so when I went over to the organ, and I asked 100 questions, because everybody, when you see the Hammond organ and all the function, I'm asking, what's this? What's that? What's this for? What's those on the floor? What's this button for? Because I've never seen an organ. And she was so patient with me. And so she said, you know what, I tell you what, why don't you come by the church and you can play the organ. And so I would go by there and practice and, just play and practice. And the pastor there, Bishop Jeffries, what she did was she said, okay, I want to pray for you. She said, because God has a special anointing upon your life. And so she got the oil, and she just then put, the oil on her finger and then put a cross mark. She knew I came from Southeast, and she knew I had a lot of issues. So she took that bottle of oil and put it above my head, and I literally believe she dumped the whole bottle, okay, because my wardrobe, everything was just soaked with oil. And then she prayed. I've never heard a person pray like that before. And then she commanded me, she said, when you come to this church, she said, before you jump on this organ, she said, I want you to get on the knees, and I want you to pray. I want you to repent. She said, I want you to repent. She said, every time, she said, even if you don't think you did wrong, I still want you to repent. And that's what I had to do before I was allowed to play for the services. I have to come to church 15 minutes prior to service, and I have to get on my knees and kneel at the organ where I'm performing, and I had to pray. And that went on the whole 7 years I was with them, and the skills just grew to the point the things that I was doing on the organ was crazy. But this is the part that I left out. I left out because I told you about the piano at Miss Stanley. Yes, I did learn how to play on the piano, but what I didn't tell you that the piano on the white keys, on the ivory keys, the white ivory keys, every other key was broken. And on the black keys, at least one out of the two, when you got to the two groups of the sharps of the black keys, one of them was missing. When you got to the group where there was three black keys, then one was missing, either the middle one, the A flat, or the B flat, the one on the right or one on the left, the F sharp. One of them was broken. So what I had to do was to maneuver around those keys. The whole piano was like that. And so and I had no idea at the time what Yahweh was doing, but at that time he was creating a style for me. And what happened was that because this key didn't work, I had to go down to the next group. So I was able to maneuver and manipulate those keys. I was able to go from one section, just without a problem. That's what I think, that's how I learned for over 2 years. So when people heard me play, it was so different because of the way my style was. Okay, but what they don't know that psychologically I was damaged because Miss Stanley A flat was broken in the midsection, and her D flat and her D was broken here. So I was psychologically damaged because I'm like, oh, this gets broke. I got to go this way, you know. And that's the way I did for years, not knowing that God has given me a style of my own. It was unbelievable, and the speed that I was able to group my chords, and you know, it was just awesome. I didn't understand at that time, but anyway, when I got to the organ, it was the first time I played the organ, and for the next 7 years, the organ, that was my life, and the things that God allowed me to do on the organ, it was just unbelievable, to the point that nobody else in the city had my style, you know, even my ability. Now, I'm not boasting or bragging. I'm just telling you how my gift came about. And but one of the things that I do like about the era when I was coming along is that when I did hear other musicians, we all had different styles. I remember when I first started hanging around with the guys in the Church of God in Christ. And this happened right after I hooked up with Ricky Fowler, and I met the different musicians, organists, and how, you know, I heard their style and my style, and we didn't compete. You know, we loved each other's style because it was different, it was fresh, and so we just had a real good time. Judd Williams, who else was there? Pastor Robert Deshay. You know, we had a lot. Jerry Gorham. Oh my God, Jerry Gorham, the late Jerry Gorham. Just a lot of them. The people up the temple, Ricky Payton. It's just so many of them. The McCoys. It was just so many, and we just enjoyed one another. It's not like today where they compete and people don't have respect for the art. You know, they really don't have respect. You know, they're more so in a competitive mode. I'm better than you, you know. I'm better than you, you know. And so, anyway, I ain't trying to go there. But as we went on with the organ, like I said, the Lord just blessed me. And to the point where I was now about 22 years old. And there was this show, this TV show, called Spread a Little Sunshine, that was on CBS, Brother Edmund Gerald. And Ed Gerald, that was his program. And, you know, he will have, every now and then, he will have auditions for people to come, the talents to come on the show. And I wanted, oh man, I wanted to get on his show. But, you know, with my choir, had everything. But my choir, they wasn't the best choir. But this time I was at the church on 15th Street. They would call it Jeffrey Specials. Everybody sung in the same key, you know. Don't despise humble beginnings. Don't despise humble beginnings. But those were the days where, you know, everybody sang in the same key, with the exception of Evangelist Gloria Lindsay. She was alto and a soprano, so whatever parts were missing, she would harmonize. Okay, but everybody else would be in the same key. So we went to audition for Spread a Little Sunshine, that big Bible Way church, you know. At that time, you know, that was the biggest church that I ever been in, you know, the Bible Way, not the one now, but the one next to it, the old one. So Gerald say, oh, I'm sorry, you know, he didn't allow us, you know, we didn't make the audition, but he noticed my gift. And, you know, he heard me, and he said, you're pretty good, you're pretty good. He said, I want to use you. And I'm like, you want to use me, you know. I've never done anything outside this, my little setting, you know. And so one day, he called upon me. He said, I got this guy I want you to play for, and his name is Ricky Fowler. I'm like, Ricky Fowler? You know, Ricky Fowler just had this big giant hit, spread the news all over the radio stations all over the country, and I would perform his album with the late great Isaac Douglas. Everybody knows him, Isaac Douglas. At that time, although James Cleveland was the king, but Isaac Douglas was hotter than James Cleveland during that era, and he was the biggest thing in gospel. And so I'm like, you want me to play for Ricky Fowler? And the thing that was really challenging, it wasn't here in the city. He wasn't telling me to come up to Bible or someplace to play. He wanted me to go on tour with him. This is the very first tour I ever been on in my life. It was the Dynamics of Baltimore, Maryland, and Ricky Fowler and Butch, we call him Butch, Norvis Miller, from the House of God. You know, the people having the horns. Norvis had this project out. So we was on tour. This was for Ed Gerald's record label. So we was on tour. We were starting in Columbus, Ohio. In Columbus, Ohio. And mind you, I've never been outside of a Pentecostal church. So Ed said, "Look, I want you to go." Man, I was so nervous. So nervous. To the point that when Tuesday came around, I said, "I know how I get out of this." I put all of my church clothes in the cleaners, the few that I had. It was enough for a week's supply because the tour was for a week. I put everything in the cleaners, and I said I was going to wait till Friday till closing time. And then I was going to call Ed Gerald and tell him that my clothes was in the cleaners. I didn't get there in time. Yeah, that was the plan. And I did execute that plan. Cleaners closed at 6 o'clock. I waited an hour. I called Ed Gerald. His grandmother answered the phone. And then at the time, I'm like, okay, I said, I wonder if she's going to give us a message, because his grandmother at that time was almost 100 years old. But she was very strong in mind. She gave him the message that I left my clothes in the cleaners, and I wasn't going to be able to make the tour. So I thought I was safe. And what did Earl Gerald do? 4 o'clock in Saturday morning, I hear this knock on the door. Bam, 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 bam. I was living there off of 18th and S Street Southeast. My family, you know, at that time I had I had 3 sons and a daughter. But anyway, he knocked on the door, and I went like, oh no. So I tried to act like I didn't hear it. He wouldn't go away. Ed wouldn't go away. He kept knocking, 4 o'clock in the morning. So finally I went to the door, and I'm like, trying to act like clear my eyes. Hey, you didn't get my message? You didn't get my message? He said, yeah, I got your message, but I need you to come on this tour, man. I don't have nobody else to play. I need you to play with Ricky. He said, I need you to go. I said, Ed, my clothes are in the cleaners, all my church clothes. You know what Ed did? Ed said, well, get your jeans. He would not accept no. He would not accept no. And so we got my jeans. I believe I started a lot of trends, but I didn't know that there's a possibility I started to dress down coats on Sundays, because I wore jeans throughout the whole tour. And we was at mega church, and we was at that time, you wore suits. You didn't go to those churches, in no jeans on those Sundays. You wore suits. So I went on that tour, and the thing is that I didn't play piano in a long time, because I was an organ man for 7 straight years. And this is where the gift comes in. And see, what people don't know is that I didn't own a keyboard or anything until I got 28 years old, and I didn't own one then. Ed Gerald allowed me to rent his organ when I was 21 years old. He allowed, because I couldn't afford, piano, because I had kids, I had a family, and things were really tight. And so Ed let me have, Ed had organ rentals, so he brought organ to my house. But before then, the way I learned music is that I sit, and I just, we didn't have, back in those days, record players, if you had the record, then, you had to put it on, put the record on, and every now and then you had to put some weight on the needle thing, because if you play it over and over, after a while the record's going to scratch, So I got so where, that I was able to learn songs without sitting down and touching the keyboard. I just listened. I got so good, and my chord vocabulary was just so great. My friend Hilton Felton, the late Hilton Felton, used to challenged me with that too, because we used to go be in the studios and hit those bitonal chords and everything, and make them as full as as full as he could, and sometimes he would just throw some ninths in there or 11s or 13, because he didn't want to go straight, because he know I would hit that, and I would nail it every time. He said, "What chord is this?" I would tell him. He hit this. What's that? And he said, and he was like, he said, not only did I, tell him the chords, identify the chord, but he would have me to come to the piano. He said, "And you play what I just played." And I would go one at a time. I said, "Okay, that's what I heard." And then I put his head again. I said, "That's what I heard. That's what I heard." And boom, there it was. And he used to love that. Hilton used to love the rest of his soul. I love him. He was a mentor, a good man, talented. That's how I learned how to do horn arrangements so well, and strings, orchestration, because Hilton was a master at it, and I got the opportunity to hear his work and not to see his work, because when he would score things, and he liked total peace and the whole nine. But I got a chance to hear his work when it was done. He would have the orchestra, and they would go and boom, go to and I was like, oh man. And my ear was so great that I just caught it all. But for these young musicians now, you have all kind of technology and everything. You have your keyboards at home, and you can work and practice. But I didn't have it like that. That's why I felt my gift was so special. It's because I didn't have an instrument, and how I would just pick the songs out just by listening to it. When we went on that tour, I did not know Ricky Fowler's music. We was in the van, and they was playing it in the car and everything. And so by the time I got to Columbus, Ohio, I knew everybody's music. I knew Ricky's music. I knew because Butch had me play for him, Novus Miller, and the dynamics. We had Jerry Caesar, the late Jerry Caesar, Shirley Caesar's nephew. That was his group out of Baltimore, and so Squeaky he would be on the piano, and Squeaky had me on the organ, and so that's out for years. Even when I wrote music, I didn't have a piano, and but when I got to the studios, I was able to I didn't fumble. I went to it, boom, because I know what I heard in my ear. I remember one time I went to the Marcellus. I was at NPR Studios there in Northwest Washington, and I was editing one of my productions. And Wynton Marcellus was there in the studios next to me. He was in the A studio with his orchestra and jazz band. They was about to do their jazz symposium that they was doing for the week for NPR. And so he heard my music, and he peeped his head through the studios, and he asked me, said, "Is it okay if I come in?" And I'm looking, I'm like, Wynton Marcellus, Wynton came in. And I was shocked because Winston stayed with me for almost 2 hours. And as I was laying my tracks, I was laying horns, parts, and he looked at me and he said, "How'd you do that?" I said, "How do what?" He said, "How are you doing these parts? Where are your charts?" I said, "Up here." And he was really amazed how I was able to. Matter of fact, I was working on a song that Kim McFarlane was singing, "The Blood." And I was doing, just laying the horns as God has placed in my spirit. And he was just amazed at that gift. He was just amazed. Of course, I know I tried him thinking, I said, "Well, look, I don't have to do this trumpet line at all, Winston. You can just pick up your horn and, lay a couple of tracks of that for me, and we'd be good, We laughed. It was a fun experience. But that's how God blessed me. The uniqueness of my gift was that I didn't have an instrument. I learned songs as I was either going through the plays, or just while I was there, while I was there. Didn't have the electronic devices where I could, just record, listen, and rewind. Didn't have those things. And so that's how, like I say, God really blessed my ear really good, to the point that when I did decide to go, George Benson, I had the privilege to be to visit George Benson. I was in his home. I ain't throwing names out there, but God blessed me to be in a lot of places and a lot of celebrities and folks that was really in the business. And George Benson's pianist told me, he said, "Look, Harold," he said, "You're really good." He said, "But I want you to learn how to read music." He said, because if you knew how to read music, I could take you I could have taken you on this tour with me with George Benson, but the prerequisite is that you have to be able to read charts. And so I said, okay. So at that time I was about 29 years old. I enrolled at the University of District of Columbia, and there to learn theory. And I found it very challenging. Is because I did learn the theory, but when I would play, especially with the books that they would give us, we call them fake books. I'm like, this is not what I'm hearing. This is. I mean, I said, this is not what I'm hearing. I'm like, what is this? So I was discouraged because what I was learning, it didn't sound like anything, and what I was hearing, it was totally different. One of the things that I did grow up with, although we didn't listen to secular music, I did grow up with Roger and Homicide, because our school trips, we would always go see the movies, whether it was Mary Poppins, movies like that, and so The Sound of Music, and those things made this everlasting imprint on my heart. In my memories, I could hear the orchestrations down through the years, a lot of Rogers and Hammerstein music. So Yahweh was preparing me for work. He was really preparing me for work, and at the time, I didn't understand what he was doing with the broken keys on the piano to teach me how to maneuver from the orchestrations that I've learned at my young age, and to bring me around Hilton Felton, and things like that, to the point where all of these components came together. By the time I got around 30 years old, I was ready, and the rest is history. One thing led to another, and I'm going to share that information with you in my next segment. Okay, my next segment, I'm going to share that with you. See you in the next segment. Okay, this segment I'm going to talk to you about how we'll do it again. In this segment, I'm going to share with you how my style came about, how God groomed me. I shared with you, some excerpts, but I'm going to show you exactly how he just molded me from one point to the other. When I first started in music, I was exposed to just a certain type, the traditional gospel music that we have in our Pentecostal church. To mind you, I had no exposure to Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, no other style. All I knew was what we grew up in. And how we went from how God just transformed me. And to give you an example, back in those days we played in one or two keys, right? For instance, like we take a song like Down at the Cross Hymn. Now some songs in our Pentecostal church, of course, we they were birthed out of the hymnals. Somebody who had that experience came back and brought it to us. So we had songs like "Down at the Cross Where I." So how we would perform it, this way. This is the way we played it back in the days. Okay, here we go. Right. So that's what we played for years. And then in some cases, because I grew up in a church where it was basically, we played guitars. So could you imagine guitars? Now, they didn't tune it according to C natural. They tuned the guitar, we tuned it hillbilly style. I think it was called Faster Proof. Faster Proof, I think it's something like that. The chords were open. Okay, but of course we're open. If you looked at a lot of the Beverly Hillbilly country presentations, they played in open keys, right? And so that's the way our music sounds. Ding-a-ling, 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 down. And so that's the way we would play. Everything sounded like put the time in, payday coming. After a while, it'd be like ding-a-ling, 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 ding-a-ling. And the drums, we didn't have the whole drum set. We would have the bass drum. My uncle would turn it over, put a hole in one, put the whole side on his foot, and beat it like this. That's the way we grew up. So here I am. The Lord is getting ready to do something miraculous in my life. Something that I was exposed to all of my life. And see, a lot of times, and that's what I tell you, a lot of times we don't understand the move or the plan of God. And sometimes when we go from one situation to another, we don't understand what he's doing, but just know that he's making a molding. Remember, he is the potter, okay? And he has to make us and mold us. So I grew up in the hillbilly, all I know is the hillbilly style of music, and that's what we play with my guitars. And then, of course, I shared how I went to Miss Stanley when I got on the piano, how she told me how great the orchestra. She got tired of hearing the boogie woogie, so I've learned songs on the basis of those chords like that. But when I broke into the contemporary, when I broke into the real true music, it was amazing how God did it. I shared with you that experience that I had when I had that little episode with angel dust when I was 15 years old. And that church that I went to when I first started playing the organ, when I first started playing the organ when I was like 15 and a half, 16 years old, that pastor happened to live right on the corner, right there on 14th and U Street, Southeast. 14th and U Street. And I used to drive for my pastor, so I was there all the time. And on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and sometimes Saturday during the course of the day, you can hear this music that's coming from this church that was right across the street. And the church that was on that corner, that big red church building, happens to be Union Temple Baptist Church. All of my life I grew up in Bird Farms, and we hung out in the street. We knew that was Union Temple Baptist Church, but I ain't never been in Union Temple Baptist. I ain't been in nobody Baptist church. Only church I've been in was the Seventh-day Pentecostal church that I grew up in. But while I was going through that change with the angel dust and trying to find myself at this new church that I was learning how to play the organ and that I was growing, I used to hear beautiful music that came out of that church. And so what I used to do is that I used to sit on the wall right there on the corner, right across directly from the old Union Temple, was a Safeway. And in the parking lot, they had a wall there in the parking lot. And literally, I used to sit on that wall, and I used to hear the beautiful singing that was coming out of that place. And I had no idea that was Angela Wimbush, Richard Smallwood, Wesley Boyd, and so many other fabulous singers. That was Crystal Murden who would come through. I had no idea of all that. I I didn't know, but I know I heard it and it was beautiful. I heard the song, I Love the Lord by Richard Smallwood. Didn't know what I was listening to at the time. All I know was it was awesome. I used to sit on that wall and just listen and listen and listen. And I heard this beautiful music that I was never exposed to or I had no knowledge about. But I gravitated to it. And they would play, at this I know now, but I didn't know. They would perform the Hawkins compositions and Andre Krauss. And so here it is, this old Pentecostal boy, Seventh-day Pentecostal church boy who never been exposed to this type of music. Now I'm hearing something that was heavenly. So what I did, like I said, every Friday, I would sit on that wall just to hear the choir practice and sing. And on Saturday, they would practice, young adult choirs. And finally, one day, a guy that noticed that I was sitting on the wall all the time, a fantastic musician. I know him now. I didn't know him before. But he recognized that I'm that guy that was sitting on the wall. So he came over to me. He said, would you want to come in and listen to the choir, come in the church service and everything. And that guy was Aaron Graves. Now, for those who don't know, Aaron is in the jazz world market now. But those who don't know Aaron Graves, boy, you ain't heard of a musician. That boy was before his time. And he's still with us, praise God. I believe he's down in North Carolina somewhere. Aaron Graves, but that guy was a playing rascal. But anyway, Aaron invited me in, and I came in, and then I saw it. I didn't know who I was looking at, but there he was on piano, the Richard Smallwood. I didn't know at the time that was Richard Smallwood. And I would see Jackie Rutherford and different ones, and I was looking, and some of the older ones who was with him, and I didn't know who they were, but all I know is that music was like heaven. And so remember, the gift that God has given me, the things that I hear, I can duplicate, I can repeat it, yeah. And I don't have to look at your hand or whatever, and so when I went home, and before you know it, I was inside the church. Because remember, I didn't have a keyboard. I was playing songs like I Love the Lord. I was playing those compositions that I would hear Richard and them rehearse. And it blessed my life. That's how God molded me. He took me from one transition to the other. He took me from Miss Sailing, where I was playing with the sunbeams, learning the songs by Mattie Moss, Clark. But let me not forget, while I was there at the school just before I was in the 10th grade, I had a substitute. My regular music teacher got sick. And so they gave us a substitute, and the substitute teacher was the great late Wayne Davis, who played for Roberta Flack and so many of those stars. He was my music teacher. He was my substitute music teacher. And so I told him at the time I was playing piano, he was playing the Slide Family Stone song, A Family Fair. And so he taught me how to play A Family Affair, and then he taught me how to play Bridge Over Troubled Water there during class. And that's all we would play. Now, at the other time, my schoolmate, while we was there, y'all know him as Sugar Bear. Okay, the Sugar Bear was there too, so we just hung out in the band room. And so we would play, the Sugar Bear would do his thing on his bass, and I would be playing Family. That's all I knew, of the secular songs, because I told you Mom wouldn't let me play no other stuff. So I knew what Wayne taught me. But the chords were so contemporary, that it was different from what they was playing in the church. But I heard these chords, and I was able to take these chords and incorporate them in what I was doing, And so, like I said, God was molding me. He was using different peoples and phrases of my life to mold me. And that was beautiful. So that's how I began to come into my own, to transition from out of the old into the new when I heard Richard Smallwood and his groups. And then at that time I started going to other concerts, and so God had took me out of where I was, out of my tradition. Sometimes, some of us like to stay in our comfort zone, but sometimes God wants to do great things in your life, so he's going to move you from out of the place where you're familiar with. And so what happened was God knew what he had for me, so he had to take me out of the traditions of the Seventh-day Pentecost. And see, they the one pushed me away. Let me tell you how they pushed me away. And it was my own mother. So I would adapt these new styles. And so when I came to church to play, the piano, my aunt and my mother, all of them would say, I can't play behind you. I don't know what you playing. And here I'm playing these upgraded contemporary chords and still the church. And I got the still church swing, but they were used to hearing the hillbilly sound. And so they didn't want to hear me play. They would say Lukey, because Luke played piano too. He followed me with piano as well. But Luke stayed in the traditional vein. And so they said, okay, Luke, you play for us. So I'm saying to my mind, okay, well, y'all like Luke playing, then I go someplace else and play. And that's what I did. I didn't go back there no more to play, because God was doing a new thing in my life. Okay, so don't be afraid and don't be alarmed when people don't accept where God is taking you. Okay, it is time to move on. Are you hearing me? It's time to move on. So I move on. And so God has taken me to another place to take me to a total different level. And that's what happened. Like I said, he was just transforming me. So by the time when I got to that age, of 22, when I read into Edmund Gerald, I was prepared for what God had for me to do. And I was able to go on the road and play for anybody. When I say anybody, I mean anybody. And so God has blessed me. And so for years, that's what I did. I played, and played, and this one thing led to another. And in this segment, I want to share how your gift will make room for you. So I look at a lot of the young people now, they got their hustle on, trying to accomplish this. They want to do this, they want to do that. But let me tell you the secret, and it's no secret. Your gift will make room for you. Never in my 50 years have I ever pursued anything on my own. My gift has always brought people to me. My gift has always brought opportunity to me. You hear what I'm saying, musicians? Are you listening? It always brought it to me. I didn't have to worry about being jealous of what nobody else was doing because my gift was busy making room for me. I was finding favor with people because they love the gift that God has given me. And so one thing for me, one thing led to another. I was playing at this particular church, one church. I forgot the name of the church, but who was there? At this time I was with the group, the Tabernacle Echoes, and they heard me play with the Tabernacle Echoes. I believe it was one of the Gospel Music Workshop of America events. The local chapter, Shirley Berkeley, was spearheading, and I believe they was up on Blazing Avenue, one of the churches up there, someplace up in Northwest. And Professor Theodore King was there, and he heard me play. At that time, I was playing the piano at that particular program. And at the service, he complimented me. He said, "Man," he said, "who are you? Where you come from?" And so we just chat for a few minutes, and he blessed me. And then, of course, he got on me too because he asked me a question. At that time, he said, "Do you read music?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Learn how to read music." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Learn how to read music." I was still on there, and I said, "Yes, sir." So another time he heard me, I was on organ. And so this particular time I was on organ after service, he came to me, he said, "Sutton." That's what he called me, Sutton. Those who know, how he talked, and, he threw his head, he walked tall, and he was a very powerful man. And Washington, we love Theodore King, how we miss him. And Theodore said, "Sutton, He said, I want you to play on the record for me. I'm doing the record. I said, yeah. He said, yeah, my choir, the WYCP choir, we're recording on some Void Records next week. And I want you to play organ. And I said, oh, man, I'm so honored. Okay. He said, okay, be there, be on time. Be at rehearsal. I believe they was rehearsing at Bishop Hart's, the late Bishop Hart's church up on Georgia Avenue. And so I got there, and I saw Danny McCrimmon there, and the late Tim Lindsay, they was there, and Johnny Burns, because Johnny Burns had to teach one of his songs. And so we was there in rehearsal, and I mean, I was there in rehearsal the whole week, never touched the keys. Matter of fact, none of us, Danny wasn't on the drums, and Tim wasn't on the bass, and Professor King said, y'all learn the music. I'm like, what music? Because we ain't getting music. He said, just listen. He said, even if you ain't playing, and I thank God for him, because he gave me some good advice. He said, even if you're not the one that's playing the song, he said, pay attention and learn the song anyway. Listen. And I remember that throughout my whole career, I listen to everything, even if I'm not playing. If somebody else teaching songs on the music, I would know that song. Why? Because Professor Tito King said, learn it, even if you ain't playing it. Yeah, that's what he said. That's what he said, learn it, even if you ain't playing it. And so one thing led to another. So I was there, and I did the WYCP choir. That's the first time I ever recorded. One of my first memorable recordings, and it's dear to my heart because it's the very first recording that I played that was on a national level, and the album did well on the charts. It was a very good album, When You Can't Believe, and that featured the late Reverend Donald Vales. And it was funny because while we was there, and Donald Vales had several songs that he was doing, but Donald Vales was supposed to play like 4 or 5 songs on the piano. And so the day of the recording session, the day of the recording session, like I said, they rehearsed these songs. Donald Vales looked at me and said, Harold, I want you to play this one. I'm like, okay. And one of the songs I know we was doing, Feeling Good. He said, I want you to play this song. I decided, I just wanted to sing, stand up and sing, and everything. I said, okay, well, I don't remember the intro and everything. I said, you start the intro, then I'll slide into it. And so he did. He started the intro. And then he did that, and then I sat right, I slid right over, and he went to Feeling Good. The choir went to sing Feeling Good. The top end, want you to believe, I feel good. Y'all remember that one? Yeah, and so we did that song, and I'm not, what they say, be ye also ready? Oh, man. Wayne Jackson, his recording session, Wayne Jackson comes to me. It was 1 o'clock, daily recording. The recording was supposed to start, I believe it was at 2 o'clock. And Wayne said, Harold, I don't want to play my song. He said, I want you to play the song. I played the song, and I'm like, and Wayne's song had more intricate parts than the other ones. The Feeling Good was pretty easy, but Wayne had a lot of movements in his song. I'll be with you, that's what he said. And I'm like, okay, now he want me to remember this song. I'll be with you, that's what he said. And as a matter of fact, when they did his song, I wasn't even at the rehearsal when they went over his song. And so I didn't hear it but one time. That was at a Friday night rehearsal. And so he came to me 2 o'clock on that Saturday and said, Harold, I want you on piano my song. People recognize the gift. I'm telling you, they recognize when that's what I say, your gift will make room for you. People will recognize your gift, and they will come to you. And so that's what happened in that particular case. And we played that song error-free, not one mistake. And I'll tell you, I miss playing with Danny and Tim. Those guys were just superb musicians. But we did a million sessions together, and God really blessed us. Remember, your gift will make room for you, and you will find favor. And one thing led to another. I remember I just finished doing the project with Ricky Fallon, Rem Isaac Douglas. We were doing the song Somehow. Future, I can't see but I believe if I hold somehow, the Lord will make a way somehow. And I'm telling you, I did that project with him, and the next thing you know, I get a telephone call. Look, I need you on my project. I mean, people were just asking me. Then my experience, because that was in 1981, and I just finished producing the late Conrad Brooks project. And the thing that was so funny, see, what people didn't know, I was being asked to produce projects, and I didn't go to school for that. I didn't know nothing about engineering. I didn't know nothing about producing because I've never produced anything in my life. But God just put you in a position, and he'll teach you if you learn at the same time. So the thing it is, he prepared me because in the earlier years when I used to sit under Hilton Felton, see, there was a reason. When I was sitting under the Hilton Felton, and Hilton Felton was producing projects, I paid attention. Y'all, okay? Pay attention, y'all. Pay attention. It's important. God is making you. He's grooming you. So I will pay attention. So and as we would go to different projects with Harbor Light Studios, I will pay attention. I will pay attention to the engineers. So to the point, I was asked, when Conrad Brooks asked me, he said, I want you to produce my album. And he wanted me to write with me. Conrad was my first songwriting partner. We were collaborating on everything called Page as well. He would call Page with the singer and the drummer. And so we would collaborate. Collaboration, we came up with some great songs that made the top 10. There's Nothing Too Hard for God, Jesus Can. You know, I've never felt this way before. And God just blessed. But anyway, Conrad asked me to produce, and of course I really didn't. This is my first production. But we went in that studio, and Yahweh blessed us. And that product did well. To the next moment, and this is the funny thing, Conrad was a member of Faith Bible Church. Faith Bible Church used to be the old Refreshing Springs, so y'all know that they have history. And it's an anointing up in that place. You know where Marilyn Summers came out of Refreshing Springs, they on Florida Avenue, on Maryland Avenue in Northeast DC. And so Conrad was there, and then next thing you know, the BLNS singers, the late Barbara Bess, after I did the Conrad Brooks project, she said, Harold, I want you to produce a record on me, for me. And I don't have a lot of money, and matter of fact, I don't have no money at all. And this is this back in 1982. But she asked me, but like I said, I was a lover of music. With me, ministry first. And it actually wasn't really ministry, because I really wasn't in ministry. You know, the church wasn't in me. I just enjoyed playing. And so Barbara Bass asked me to do this, and she didn't have no money, but the money wasn't a concern for me. But anyway, I found the new doctor's project for her, and she paid me $250. That's all. She paid me $250 in 1982 to do that project. But out of the project came an abundance of blessing where I was able to reap tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands, because I did that project. So musicians, don't let your motive be money, okay? Because in everything there is purpose, and you will never know. If you see everything with the dollar bill, you're going to miss the glory. Okay, I hope that helps somebody. Well, anyway, I wound up doing that project. The project was entitled You. I had some fabulous musicians. Anybody else could have done that project, but she asked me. And I guess she thought because I was one of the hottest musicians in the town, at that time. So, but I'm not going to say that. I'm just speculating, assuming. But when Yahweh gives you favor, he gives you favor. Okay? So I did that project, and on that project I had the privilege to produce a legend song. Yeah, he was a legend. The late Professor Alex Bradford, and he wrote a song called "I Found a New Doctor and Jesus Is His Name." And that song was historic, and it did wonders. It catapulted the BLS singers to the top of the charts. And they did this on an independent label to the point they was at Constitution Hall. I was doing something else someplace else, but they was performing at Constitution Hall with James Cleveland. James Cleveland was the headliner there, and they broke out with that song, "I Found the New Doctor." And I'm telling you, James Cleveland, who was, had a lot of influence with the Savoy Records because he was their top artist. He looked at Fred Mendelssohn and Milton Bingham, and he said, "Sign them right now, right there backstage right there at Constitution Hall, DAR at Constitution Hall. Savoy Records signed BLS to a multiple contract that night. And so that same project, they didn't have to do anything with the project that I produced. James said it was good. And so they put it out the way it was, and it just catapulted, just rocketed him. The song, "I Found the New Doctor," was so big for the BLNS singers that it took us around, to many places, venues, large venues, auditoriums, cathedrals, and the song blessed many people. But at the same time, because of that, remember, I made $250 off of production, but after that, all kind of offers came in for producing and for me to write for them and whole nine, and the money was there. Amen. And so don't make everything about money, because there's purpose in everything. That's what the Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes. See, everything, Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, say everything under the heavens, there is a time and there is a season, there is a purpose. Okay? So musicians and artists, you remember that just because the money is not there, God has purpose. Okay? And so one thing led to another. After I did that production, and then Matty Johnson called me, and this one called me. Eugene Flip Force called me. This one called me. To a point, all during the 80s, I was working with 4 major record companies, producing some of their top artists and writing for some of their top artists. Here I am. You talk about a man who never went to school for this stuff. Man never went to school for engineering or anything, music. God put me in place. My gift made room for me. He put me in place where greats be people who studied for years. My gift has taken me place. I've been able to do things that people went to school for all their years and worked all their life, and they haven't accomplished not one of the things. But God allowed me to do so much. That's why we're grateful. And I'm right now trying to share with you. Your gift will make room for you. Your gift will make room for you. Embrace your gift. Fall in love with gift, not money. Because if you fall in love, embrace your gift, the better you'll be. And then you'll be able to demand what you want. So one thing led to another. It all came to me, one thing after another. I was asked, out of all of my productions, which was my favorite. And I said, I have 4 that really means. Now, I love them all. But the very first one is the one with the WYCB, of course, because it was the one of the WYCB choir. And that was on a major label. And the second one that's not necessarily in this order, okay? Not necessarily in this order. But the second one was the project that I did called "You Got the Power," because it was my very first on my independent label. So that was very special to me. And then the third of my recordings was the song with the Tabernacle, a project I did with the Tabernacle Echoes. It was one of my favorite because it was the very first an album that I co-produced, and of course, I wrote songs. I wrote 4 songs on that project. But it was the first time I had a full orchestra, the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra, under the direction of Brother Jerry Thomas. And I was really excited about that. Jerry did an absolutely wonderful job on that project. It was the very first project where we had real strings and horns. And that project was in, I believe, 82 or 83. I was really excited about that one. And then, of course, I was honored when the shuttle challenge, a shuttle just exploded in the sky. And I'll never forget that day. About 6 o'clock that evening, Sylvia Wayman of the BLNS Singers, she had just finished writing the song, referencing that experience, that explosion. She called me. I was at my dinner table eating with my family. She said, Harold, I cried all day and I just couldn't shake it. So I went to my piano and I wrote this song. And I said, Sylvia, I'm eating. She said, Harold, you got to hear it. You got to hear it. So she played it while I was eating. I stopped eating. I was in awe. To the point, I said, look, let me call Armin Baladian. Now, at this particular time, I had just finished signing a production deal with Armin Baladian. He's the mother company is Westbound Records out of Detroit, Michigan. Where you have Bootsy Collins and Ohio Plate, all those different big type secular artists on the mother label, but the gospel subsidiary label was the sound of the gospel. People like Thomas Whitfield, Yolanda Adams, the Clark sisters, and I could go on and on. So the Lord has blessed me after I finished the productions on the BLNS on Savoy Records, and the BLNS had just finished doing their first project for Sound of the Gospel. The Lord gave me favor, and let me share this, and let me finish this Shuttle Challenger. Well, right after BLS had recorded that particular project, Armin fell in love, with my gift, and so I called Armin. I said, listen, I called him that night right after Sylvia called me at my dinner table, and I said, Armin, you got to hear the song that Sylvia wrote about the shuttle. So we put, Sylvia on, Sylvia sang for Armin. Armin said, Harold, go to the studio tonight. Yeah, I go to the studio. I said, Armin, it's too late to go tonight. He said, okay, well, first thing in the morning, you go to the studio first thing in the morning. So we called George Eimer. I called George Eimer from Harbor Light Studios. I called him. I said, look, we got something we have to do first thing in the morning. And so George met us there at the studios, and Sylvia Wayman laid those tracks. And she did most of the tracks. She wrote the song, and she laid most of the tracks with a little assistance from me and everything. So we produced it, and we did some little arrangements to help her. And we had that project finished. And that evening, it was there. We sent it off to Detroit, and it was on the market for the next day. The song is called The Day America Cried. You can go on YouTube, and you can hear it. It's called The Day America Cried, BLNS Singers. And but the reality, they say BLNS singers, but it was really Sylvia Wayman. They were the three musketeers that they had a pact that whatever any of them do, that they would include everybody, but the BLNS singers wasn't on that. The only person out of the group was on that was Sylvia Wayman. Sylvia wrote the song, but the whole 9 yards, but she included her sisters because they were like the three musketeers. And that project came out, and the first day, it sold 50,000 copies. And the record company, all the proceeds went to the families of all those astronauts who was lost, in that explosion. But from there again, God opened, Yahweh opened more doors, because that morning when it was released, it was televised on Good Morning America. Sylvia and I was interviewed from the studio live by Good Morning America. It was all over the country. And that opened other doors. to the point I did a couple of off-Broadway plays, and I wrote for this, I wrote for that, started writing jingles and commercials, and like I said, one thing leads to another. My brothers and my sisters, your gift will make room for you. And I was talking about going back to, say, which one was my favorite. I talked about the Tabernacle Echoes because it was the first that I had the orchestration, but then I just said the one that was dear to my heart was this one here. But the last one, the latest one, I did so many projects. I've recorded over 100 projects. Myself, I had 7 myself on my label. But the one that's truly dear to my heart is the last one that I recorded with the Touch of Grace that was titled Conversation. And the reason that is so dear to my heart is because I was in a season where I quit music. I let everything go, where I didn't want to do music anymore because I had been through a struggle, personal struggle of loss. The landscape of my life changed in 1999. My grandmother had passed, and I went through a lot of changes because my grandmother was my heart. And then just a couple of years later, in 2002, my son, my namesake, he was brutally murdered on the street. I've never, so I dealt with it and never, it was just like I really never got over my grandmother, so now I'm dealing with that. And then 2 years later, my mom passed. And, I was crushed. Oh, man, I was crushed. And then 2 years, my nephew was killed on the streets of D.C. And so my focus shifts. As a matter of fact, when my son died, and I kind of said to myself, well, had I really been invisible, had I really been there, although he was killed by a stranger, I felt that I could have just really he would have been in another situation. He just would have been, it probably wouldn't have been in the position he was in, because I've done so much traveling and music, and I said I neglected my family, but at the time, especially when you have a young man, it's important that you really, really keep an eye and have him. He was 27 years old when he was killed. He was into independent living. He was married and everything. But what I said to myself was that, I will never again be so busy where I'm not there for my family. So I put all of my focus on my family, on my younger boys, my younger kids, and I put all my focus. So I stopped traveling. I stopped traveling altogether. It was no longer important to me. No longer important to me. The only thing was to be in church and to raise my kids, to be there for them. And I did that for years. So I kind of got out the loop because I've been out of the industry maybe about 12 years, because I concentrated on family and ministry. But then when I came back, when I felt stronger to come back after in the early 2000s, there again, God, I'm sorry, in 2012, and in 2012, that I was able to, it took me, like I said, it took me that long to get myself together. I don't think, but God had restored me. God had blessed me. He healed me, and I was able to, do that. But there was a lot of things that God allowed me to do. The Next Generation Conference that was held at the in Washington D.C. at the Verizon Center, where they had thousands, about 14,000 in attendance. Mary, Who's Who, Kelly Williams, Marvin Winans, Dietrich Haddon, and just so many. Michael Speaks, and God blessed me where I was asked to be the musical director for that event that was shown on the Word Network for 8 hours. And I had the responsibility to handle the music, and it was awesome. And like I said, your gift will make room for you. God, Yahweh put me in place. Like I said, I was doing I never had no background in no theater. Didn't go to school for it, but I wound up being an MD for stage plays, all Broadway stage plays and different things like that. So what I'm saying, my brothers and sisters, your gift will make room for you. Now, don't forget, September 22nd, 6 o'clock p.m., I'll see you there at the 50th year celebration.